and welcome to my segment. As Chris said, we're working on building this month, and this month I'm working on a plastic kit. Dr. Zayas from Planet of the Apes. This one's from Aurora. Originally it was produced from Adar, and they repopped it this year, and so luckily we get to build models that we had when we were kids. We mentioned this stuff before, and we're happy these companies are doing it. It gives us a lot of models to play with at this time. So basically it's just a plastic kit. And the one thing about the instructions are they're basically very simple, and there's not a real order to it. There's the 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can kind of go all over the place on these models. So I'm basically going to do that. What I'm going to do on this segment is I'm going to build as far as I can, and what I can't finish on this segment I'll finish between segments, and then the next segment I'll probably work on the puttying and the seam work. And then we'll get it all cleaned up and get it ready for painting and get the whole model done, hopefully. So now I'm just going to pull my parts out, make sure I got everything. And never, ever twist these off the sprue, even if they're loose. Grab your nipper and nip them off. If you noticed, or if you remember I did a review on the Beast model, and the company actually took them off the sprue and they twisted them. And it took big gouges out of the model. It just drives me crazy. It's just more work for the modeler. So basically all I do is I come through and I check the pieces, make sure they're all there. I want to pull them all apart because I'm going to be gluing this all up. And Zayas doesn't have a lot of pieces, so this should be a nice easy one for the show. And I just want to make sure everything's there before I get started and go, oh, I'm missing major pieces. But I think I've got everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 arms, 2 hands. These pegs right here are for the arms if you want to keep them mobile, but I'm not going to keep mine mobile. I'll still use them just to set it, but I'm going to glue the arms on it. I'm not a big fan of having moving models. I'd rather have them seam nicely so they look realistic and just glue them solid on there. But all the pieces are here, so I'm just going to clip the arms off. And you can get, these are just your standard nippers. You can get these at any hardware store. The smaller pair just fits well in your hand instead of those big wire cutter ones, but I've used those when I've had to if I didn't have anything else. Okay, that's pretty much everything off the sprue. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to start with the head. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to clean off some of the sprue parts. And just kind of get them a little cleaner. I'll also do a quick test fit, and I'm just going to glue them on. Generally, with testers, it dries fairly quick. If I have a piece that doesn't fit well, I'll use a rubber band and wrap it around. But I find that most of the time, you know, it will do a decent job just by hand. One thing I do, and I know a lot of people don't, I tend to do, is I use a lot of testers, and I use it kind of as a seam filler, just from the start of the model. I'll use a nice bead on it, set it in, and then it's less work later on. If I lay a nice bead on it, I won't wipe that off now. What I'll do is I'll let that dry, and I'll come back and scrape that, and a lot of times that fills the seam itself, so I won't even have to go in with putty later or sand it, and that's a really nice fit on him. So I'll probably just let that dry, come back with my knife, probably next segment, just scrape it off a little bit, and I'm probably going to be ready to paint at that point. There might be a couple places where the hair up here goes in a certain order that the seam might affect, and I'll come back and I'll just edge that out with my tool, like right up in here. And so I'm going to do the head. The body I'm going to have to do last because I do want to use these pegs to hold them in. So I'll do the arms, the head, the base pieces, and then I'll put the arms in there and try to figure out where I want them before I actually glue them, and then I'll glue them on there. So I want to make sure I have the right pieces for these arms before I go and getting glue all over. One thing about this glue too is a lot of people will start working on things and they'll get glue on their finger, and either they won't notice it or won't think it'll matter. The second you have glue on your thumb or your finger and you touch a piece of your model, you're going to have a nice print on there, and then you're either going to have to sand it off. So if you do get glue on your hand or on your on your instruments, just take the time to clean it off, and it'll save you a lot of work in the future. So I'm just going to make sure that all the sprue things are off of these, and I'll just get some glue on here, and I'll just glue those on. We're doing half segments, and that way I don't need to bore you with the gluing up of the whole thing. It's basically all the same when you're at this point. One thing to consider too is the head I probably won't glue on even after the whole body's glued together and I'm doing the seam work, because it should fit on the body rather nicely because of the hairline. And if I keep that off, when I get to the painting aspect of it, I won't have to worry about, do I painting the shirt and then I have to repaint part of it. This way I can just put this on like a pencil, paint the whole thing, and just set it right on them, glue it down, and I'm pretty much ready to go at that point. So here we go. We're going to snap that one in. And these fit really tight, actually. These fit really tight. And again, I have a bead of glue. You can see it on there. That is right up there, and it's a little raised. And I'm not going to clean that off. I'm going to just leave it there. And then when it dries like that, I'll be able to come back and just take my knife and scrape off that, and I hope I won't have to do much more seam work on it. And this model is fitting together really well. And again, that's a really nice tight fit. I'm watching the glue on my fingers. I don't want to get fingerprints on it. It just means more work. And you can see a big bead there, but once it's dry, that bead's going to just scrape right off, right to the seam line, and with luck, I won't have to do any more work than that with it. Okay, now, this piece, I'm not really sure how it goes. Oh, it's fairly easy. So I'm going to whip that one on right now, just checking to see the sprue lines down on the side here. Everything looks pretty clean on that. It's kind of fun doing these. I haven't built these. I owned these originally when they first came out in the 70s, and here we are 30 years later, and we get to build the same models. Now this one is, if you'll notice, will stop at that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb on there. So I'll pour my glue to that point, and I'll use my thumb as a guide. And it goes to the edge of that one. So I'm just going to go like that, use my thumb as a guide. And actually, I'm going to go this way with it. And there's a bunch of different glues. You've seen different glues on our shows. Chris likes using 10X. He did that with Shane, one of our younger veterans, and I've always been a Testors fan. I don't know if it's the odor brings back memories, because it's the same stuff I've been using for 30 years of doing this. And using it as seam filler, it's just that I got really used to using it. Now this is going to be a little harder, but since it's a rock, even if I don't fill up all these seams, it's going to be really easy to spackle that on there and make it look really good. But still, it's got a pretty decent fit. There's a couple of cracks in here that I might have to come back and putty up, but the fewer the better. And if you can see, I've got a bead going right there, and that's probably going to not need any work at all. These models are based on Beneath the Planet of the Apes when they go to the underground city. And Maurice Evans played Zaius. I think it's Maurice Evans. He also played Samantha's father on Bewitched. Okay, and that's a good base piece. And that'll end up going right here, I believe. And as soon as this dries and I scrape it down and do the putty work, I'll just glue that right on there too. This piece I'm not going to glue down right now because it's just pretty much simply a piece that I can snap there. I'll glue it on when I'm after done painting it, but it'll be a lot easier just painting it off of there and just doing this to it and gluing it down, and I'll be done. Then there's this book that's going to take some work to it, and there's a seam in it that's going to be some trouble. So I might glue that in and work on the seam just to get it cleaner. This I won't glue at all. That'll be an easy piece. And all I got left really is the body to do. And so I'm going to take these locator pegs and just kind of stick them in there. I'm not worrying about gluing them at all. But I want it enough to, just so I can set him in there and figure out exactly how I want the arms. Since I don't have a pencil on me, I'm just going to kind of fake it and hope that I like how I pick. So I'm just going to leave the body kind of not glued. I'm going to move his arms around, see kind of what I want. I always see the orangutans as they're the law makers. So I'd say he'd be more passive. I know he's got a fist there, but he wouldn't be going, because he should be more passive. I think they were considered one of the more intelligent in the movies. Those orangutans and chimps, and the gorillas were the bad guys. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the shirt decoration on the ape. So I think I'll just go and do that. So I'm going to glue this body together. And as I'm gluing it, we're going to be heading out. And that's another segment of our show. And I'll be back next week filling some seams and scraping some seams. Hopefully I won't have to fill too much, but I know I'll have to fill some. And I'll get it as cleaned up as I can and get it ready for priming and painting. So we're going to see you next week with more model building. Thanks for watching.